Hallå, hallå. Hörs jag? Har du med ljud? Välkomna till Chalmers Arkitektur och en gästföreläsning inom området vårdens arkitektur. Det här är den fjärde i serien som vi arrangerar den här våren. Och nu har turen kommit till Søren Daugbjerg från Vilhelm Lauritzen Arkitekter. Søren ska prata på engelska. Søren har varit med och varit en av dem som drivit detta projekt med stort sjukhus på Själland som man har vunnit tillsammans med Herzog De Meuron. Och det är ett av de stora danska supersughusen. Så vi är väldigt spännande på att se vad du har att visa oss. Efteråt blir det lite möjlighet att ställa frågor också naturligtvis som vanligt. Så mycket välkommen.
No? Yeah. Now it's good. This is echo. First of all, thank you for having me. As you said, I'm Søren Daugbjerg. I'm the CEO and architect in the company of Vilhelm Lauritzen that some of you might know. When you fly south, you probably go through Gästföreläsning Airport. We've designed the most of that. We are a Copenhagen-based company. We do most of our work in Denmark, but we do have projects in other countries, such as Sweden. We do projects in Lund and in Landskrona. I'll present this in English. I do have a daughter-in-law, my son's girlfriend, Emily. She's from Kristianstad, and she never understands what I say. Never, when I speak Danish. But feel free to ask any kind of questions on the way. I think I understand Swedish better than you would understand my Danish. So do it that way. What I will present today is our competition, the winning competition entry for the Nyt Hospital in Hillerød in North Zealand in Denmark. I must admit, when I planned this lecture, I was thinking that I would be giving it to a lot of students, architecture students, but as I get it, most of you are planners within the healthcare sector. So feel free to ask any kind of questions. I'm not maybe the right person to answer all the planning questions, but I'll do my best in English. All right. It's actually a big group that's been doing this project together. It's an international group. We do have Norwegian hospital planners. Our engineers are from England and Denmark. We have cost controllers from England. But the main sort of emphasis right now is on the architecture. And we formed a JV, Herzog De Meuron and Vilhelm Lauritzen, to actually undertake the contract with the client. And I think most of you have heard of Herzog De Meuron. A lot of their projects are well known. You might know the Bird Nest in Beijing or the Opera in Hamburg, Tate Modern. They're very sort of famous international architects. And lately, they've been aiming at the healthcare sector. And one of the most impressive projects that they've been doing is a rehab facility in Basel for neurological patients. It's a very beautiful set. It's very low scale. It's very patient-friendly. And if you get a chance to study that, the rehab in Basel, you should do so. They are, of course, what we call the design consultant in our working relationship, where we are what is called the executive architect. So their main concern would be the design of the building, and our main design or concern would be to execute the project and execute the construction. It's not entirely divided like that. We work in integrated teams, so we've been very active from VLA, from our side, in the design and the competition, and they will be very active during construction documents and the construction period. Now, you're probably aware of the background for why Denmark is building all these hospitals. Some of them are called super. We're doing a super hospital. We're not quite sure what that super means yet, but we'll find out. The thing is that the state is actually funding a lot of all these 13 projects, and the regions, the municipalities are funding the rest. To get the government funding, you actually have to adhere to a number of standards that's been set out by the government, that the new hospitals, for instance, is only with one-bed ward rooms. And the other one is that they have to have what is called in Danish FAP. It's a joint acute facility which acts like a sort of small acute hospital within the hospital. So instead of having any emergency, like you usually have, we have like a little hospital within the hospital where most of the patients, acute patients, get treated in 1 or 2 days. And instead of sending the patients to the different departments, the doctors get sent down to what's called the joint emergency department. It's a request from the politician that this is how it should be. And a good question is, of course, how is all this going to be funded? Where do all this money come from? And the basic principle of all the new hospital projects in Denmark is that they should actually produce a cost reduction on the operational cost of about 8%. So the politician's equation is, if we can save 8% on the operational cost on hospitals, we can easily fund the construction of the new hospitals. So this is what we have to look after, that we actually provide a very efficient hospital that will save operational cost, and also that we live up to the standards that the Danish government has set for the new hospitals. This being said, the actual brief, the competition brief for the new hospital in Hillerød was somehow different than the other ones that we've seen. You know about when you write a new brief or a program for a hospital, that you tend sort of to repeat what's there and then add 20%. I mean, a lot of those competition programs that we get is like that. I mean, you count the number of examination rooms and then you add 20%, and this is how it works. And you get those very detailed binders of information that you have to process into a project proposal for the competition. Here was a little bit different. I think the program was very inspiring because it talked of principles, area use principles, and concepts for how these things should go together. And it was not sort of tying everybody down into exact square meters and stuff like that. So I think it all sort of circles around all these principles and concepts, circles around that we need to structure a hospital in a new way so we get the most out of it. And we have, first of all, to put the patient first, to put the patient in the center. This drawing, I don't know if you're familiar with Rorschach drawings, are you? I mean, those kind of dots you get when you go to the psychiatrist, and you should look at them and tell what you think or associate with them. This is how we saw that one in the competition brief. Because it sounds a little bit fluffy, but I still think it's the right way to go, to actually ask for what is it that you want to achieve rather than specifying all the different rooms. So that was a very inspiring brief. The other thing that really inspired us is the landscape. The site where we have to build this hospital. It's a greenfield hospital. And the site, maybe I should just tell you how big it is. I think I should do that. It's a greenfield hospital of about 120,000. It's 122,000 square meters. It has about 660 bedrooms and 13 specialities. And the investment, total investment is about 3.8 Danish billion, where we use a construction budget of 2.2 billion Danish kroner. So this is the size of it. But what really got us moving was, besides from the brief, which I thought was very inspiring, also this site. It's a very pristine area just south of Hillerød. And the landscape is a very soft rolling hills. It's not too high. We have forest, we have grasses, we have meadows, but it's all sort of held on the horizontal. And the sky is a very important element for being on that site. So you could say that both the brief with the patient-friendly hospital and all the healing aspects, but also this site here made us want to do a very low hospital. We thought that whoever should be there should be in very direct contact with nature and all the qualities on the site. So we started off by looking into different principles of how to organize the hospital in such a way that we could keep it low but still efficient. This is a very important drawing because when you do a low hospital, it tends to get very wide. In Denmark, we have two hospitals, Herlev, which is a high-rise, and a treatment building next to it. The other one is Hvidovre, which is very long and only 3 or 4 stories. And in one of them, you have to spend a lot of time waiting for elevators, Herlev. The other one, you have to spend a lot of time walking in corridors. But still we wanted to do this low, efficient hospital. And we also wanted to do a hospital where the central space was a garden, was a big garden that everybody could enjoy, and to the inside, while everybody could enjoy to the outside the presence of what we thought was a beautiful landscape. So we were looking at a figure like that. We knew that the perimeter of the building would be sort of given by the number of bedrooms that we have to put out there. So it would look like a thing like that if we didn't do anything to it. But in order to get very short distances from a central point, we decided sort of to move the red dots together. So there will be very close proximity from the center of the building to the cores, staircases, elevators of the complex. So this is why we started to look at this clover-shaped building, because in that way we could obtain efficiency and proximity to all the cores from a central point and still keeping it low. Now, the way we chose to organize that was in a 4-story building where the two lower stories are diagnostic and treatment, and the 2 upper floors are bed wards. The way that the square meter works is that the bed wards only occupies the perimeter or the rim of the form, whereas the 2 lower floors actually takes out the most of the 2 lower floors. So on the roof of level 1, we had the possibility of having a big central garden. Now, the way that we arranged the base or the pedestal was that in the lower floor, on the ground floor, we had all the hot floors, all the very heavy technical installations, the diagnostic imaging, and this joint emergency department, the FAP, as well as the ICU, the intensive, and the surgery. We wanted them to be in very close proximity in order not to push the patients around too much. On top of that, we had a floor mainly with outpatient clinics for day patients basically coming. And this is also where we would want to have the central lobby of the hospital. And then on top of that, of course, the 2 wards levels. Yeah. The blue arrow here explains what the outpatient flow is, whereas the red is mostly the bedridden patient flow. And those two are separated. That's very important for us. If you look at a closer look at it, you can see how it looks. It's a very low hospital that sits in the landscape, and it does have gardens above level 1 and gardens on ground floor also. Once we laid out the section with the hot floors on the ground floor and the outpatient clinics, therapies and stuff like that on the first floor, we started to look for organizing principles for our hospital. And the first thing is that we thought that the more frequented a department, the more centralized is the location. So we tried to actually have all the departments that was very much in use all the time to be very close to the center and therefore also very close to the lobby and the 4 cores that we laid out. And the other principle of that would be that it's very important that pharm, surgery, diagnostic imaging, and intensive care is very closely linked without interference of any other flows. That goes also for the first floor, where all the outpatient clinics and the therapies are located. They should also have the same logic that the more frequented a function is, the closer it gets to the center of the building and to the cores. Of course, when you do that, you could say priority, there's some of the functions that we push to the far side. And that would be offices, research, labs, and also the wards for the FAM, for the Joint Emergency Department. And that's a choice. Yeah? What? Den har et eget sted. Der er sådan et hjerte, hvad hedder det? I'll do this in English. Yeah, that's. I think it's part of the operation department on the ground floor, but it has a direct link to the bed ward related to the heart department. Now we talked about the importance of having the vertical cores with the bed lifts, the patient lifts, the goods lifts, and the AGV lifts located so it can actually service both the central core, but also the 4 leaves of the clover. When you look at it, if you take each floor plate and lay it out like that, you can see, do we have can I point with something? Do we have a stick or an arrow? But maybe you could see the way that it works, that on the first floor we have the entrance and the main lobby with the outpatient clinics feeding into it and the therapy. Below that we have the FAM, the diagnostic imaging, the intensive care and the surgery department lying down there. And on top you see the 2 layers of wards. Yeah. Now, we think that flows is actually one of the main factors you have to think about when you design a hospital. I would be fair to you to say this is the first hospital I've ever designed. My background is more in designing airports and doing lab buildings, so this is the first one. But when we got closer into designing the building, I realized that it's in a lot of ways like an airport. In an airport, you have to design for flows also. You have arriving passenger, departing passengers. You have to think about the Schengen, non-Schengen passport situation. We have to take care of food, luggage, waste, security, customs, and things like that. when you design airports, this is really what you need to think about. How all these flows are functioning without interfering with each other. In an airport, it's about security, and it's about efficiency. In a hospital, it can be about lives. So if the flows doesn't work properly, it takes too long time, you get mixed up ways of moving through the building, it's not going to be very good. So actually, these diagrams now, and that I'm going to show you now, is really the most important things to structure the whole hospital project. The first one is the bedridden passengers or patients. When they get to the hospital, they usually come through FAM, this joint emergency. This is where we have the reception for all passengers coming, either by helicopter, by ambulance, or on their own. They get transported into this area of the building, which is where the diagnostic and some of the treatment is taking place. It's like the mini hospital I talked to you before. And there is some ward, some bedrooms just adjacent to that. This department has a very close proximity to the surgery, to the diagnostic imaging, and to the intensive care. So this is the main flow for them. Most patients coming into the FAM will stay there 12 hours, 24 hours, and either they get sent back home or they'll be sent to a department, right? Or they'll be sent to, this is the 12-hour beds for the emergency department, and these above here is the 24-hour beds for the emergency department. It can happen that people, acute patients coming into the FAM, needs to go to the different departments, and that's where it's very important to have direct, good bed lifts going direct to the relevant department of in the bed wards. Yeah. On level 1, this is where we take care of all the outpatients. The outpatients will arrive in the main entrance here and will use the lobby to very directly get distributed to the relevant outpatient clinic or the therapy they need. This is also where we have the clinical chemical department for blood testing and stuff like that. So this is sort of more the day patient floor. And then again, all this traffic can happen without interfering with any of the flows of the bedridden patients or the staff. Now, it can happen that some of the outpatients, such as endoscopy and X-ray treatment for the day, that they need to go down to the hot floor on ground floor, and the way that happens is they enter through the same entrance to the lobby in the middle, and there will be dedicated stairs and elevators going down to the piece of the surgery that has to do with day surgery and endoscopy, and the same for the people going down to receive X-ray treatment for the day. This is usually the very tricky part to solve in a hospital without crossing any main flows, but I think we managed to do that. Yeah. Another traffic or another flow that we have to accommodate for is some of the patients, some of the bedridden patients in the wards will occasionally need to go to some of the outpatient clinics on that floor, and we need to design a way that they can actually get transported in their bed down to the floor with outpatient clinics and get treated there and going back again. Then another very important flow is families and visitors. They actually follow the same flow as the outpatient clinics. And from the central lobby, they will get sent to the wards on the 2 floors above, or the people coming to the FAM can actually also directly get to the FAM beds that's on the next floor. Yeah. A thing I haven't spent too much time on, but I just mention it, is that apart from the four-leaf clover form we're having what we call a service village. That's where we have the kitchen, the goods deliverance. I think we also have bed wash there. And this is all being serviced by AGVs, auto-guided vehicles, which is robots, that through a tunnel from the service village to the basement of the hospital, take special packages and distribute them all over the hospital to the right department or to the right use. Right now, we're doing the specification of this, and the wish is actually that, for instance, sterile goods gets packed in special packages for each individual operation, for instance, and then it gets shipped to the right surgery theater. So everything that's needed sterile is there in one package, and it's all been done automatically and transported by these robots. We still have the pneumatic tube system for blood testing and stuff like that. So there's a lot of mechanical system to sustain the use of the hospital. And it has also to flow in the right way in order not to jeopardize any of the other crucial flows. This is a drawing that tells you how the ground floor is actually planned as it is right now in a real drawing. I'm done with talking about flows now, so now you can relax a little bit. But the floor down below is that we do have the farm area here with the main entrance for people coming on their own here, the ambulance yard, and the entrance for helicopter patients. And it's divided into a diagnostic and treatment portion of the farm and a bed portion. Up here we're having basically uniform layouts of the surgery theaters. We got 8 different units. And I talked about the day surgery and the day X-ray treatment. Here we have the diagnostic imaging, and on top here we have the intensive care. What's very important is that the distances between the different departments here is very minimal, so you can actually get transported from one department to the next very easily. And the other one is that they're very close to the vertical course that gets them to the bed wards and even to the outpatient clinics. You could say that the same logic goes for the first floor, where you have the main entrance coming here, and you get into the central portion of the hospital, which is the lobby, and from there, the patients can actually, along the courtyards, go to either the outpatient clinic or the therapy that they need. And the whole thing is supported by a second system, which is on the outside for staff and for bedridden patients and for goods. Yeah. On the top floor, we're having, on the 2 top floors, we are laid out the wards. And the wards is in a logic that we have sort of 4 alike portions, and it's there are 64 bedrooms in each of them, and they are arranged in 2 bed wards of 32, and they're broken down into 8 times 4. So for each 8 rooms, we have 1 nurse station and 2 departments of 32. They actually share a lot of facilities such as kitchen and lounges and stuff like that. That was a question, right? No. If you take a little bit closer look, you can see that the way that we've arranged it is that each bedroom is about 19 square meters, including bathroom. And they're all been given a balcony, both on the inside and on the outside. And the shared facilities is mostly around here. This is also where you have all the technical, the shafts for the HVACs and the ventilation units and stuff like that. And for each department, there will be a dining area. That's very close to the exterior. Two of the departments are different, for neurology and for mother and child. The room are slightly bigger. For the neurology patient, it's because you always move them around in the bed, and for the mother and kid department, it's because the family is usually staying there overnight. But the rest is very much the same. Yeah. Now, even though this form looks organic and all this, we've been very concerned about flexibility and standardization, I think it is in English, sorry. Flexibility is very important for the future. It should be very easy to adapt the facilities to new use. Everybody knows that hospital equipment, IT medical equipment and all that will change. The way that you treat patients will change. So we need to plan for that kind of flexibility to a very high degree. The other one, doing things standards, is not only about saving money on the construction costs. It's also about trying to achieve secure procedures for the staff. If all the rooms that a nurse works in is laid out the same way and is fitted out the same way, then it's easier to have the same procedure being with the patients. And the same goes for the operating suite and X-ray modalities. So it's not that we just want to make it be the same just for making it being the same. It's also because we want to sustain that the operating procedures are the same all over. Again, going back to my sort of home turf, airports and aeroplanes, you probably know that the airlines that makes the most money is the one that only use one kind of airplane. And that's because the pilots or the stewards and everybody knows exactly how to do it. So the procedures become standard for them, and it's much cheaper for Ryanair or somebody like that to operate that way. So it's the same kind of thinking that we've been trying to achieve here. If we are looking at the two lower floors, it's really a very, very simple structure that we're trying to do. It's a column concrete slab on a grid. It's all orthogonal, except for our beautiful curved gardens around the lobby. Everything is actually totally orthogonal and on a grid. The way that we lay out spaces is with these bands that are totally alike. For instance, the outpatient clinics. They're laid out exactly on the same grid, and a room here would be the same as a room there, but also the supporting facilities, the cupboard for linen, things like that would always be arranged in the same way. So it shouldn't make too much of a difference for a nurse working here or a nurse working there. We also said that as the patient uses the inner corridors and the staff and bedridden patients the outer, you can actually make a division of the bands any way you like it. So it's a flexible use of the same square meters, you could say. Maybe you could see it even more clear here that we deliberately work with the same kind of bands all over the first floor. And on the ground floor, you can see that the surgery theaters, the X-ray modalities, and the intensive care units are all laid out the same way and shaped the same way. We just been through, in the hospital, we've been through the design specification phase. Byggeprogrammet hedder det på dansk. Hedder det også det på svensk? Byggeprogram, yeah. And it seems like this way of thinking is very well received by the doctors. They can see it work for them. Yeah. And if we get a little closer, we can see the system of the bands that faces a courtyard. We can see the system of the corridors that is being used by the outpatient, and the corridors that's mainly be using by the staff. So the idea is that the outpatients comes from the central point and moves out along these courtyards to the actual outpatient clinic, whereas staff and all other will use the outside corridors to service it all. Yeah. Now, another thing that we really wanted to emphasize in this project is we wanted hospital to have a very clear and very sort of immanent relation to the nature. It's not only about you've probably been talking a lot about healing architecture and how patients in close contact with nature and daylight and sunlight and stuff like that maybe gets a better cure or even a faster cure. Of course, this is a very important element in the way that we think hospitals, that we should be able to provide that. But on top of that, we also think that if we can use all the landscape elements, our courtyards, our beautiful site, our central garden, to help with wayfinding, I think that would be really good. One of the things that I fear the most when I enter a hospital is the wayfinding. You talk to the receptionist and she says, you're going to take lift number 34 and then take corridor number 8A. And that's sort of very scary for me. So what we try to do here is always to give a landscape quality, to orient yourself while you're finding your way through the hospital. So that's another way of seeing it. You might remember the way that we laid it out with the two diagnostic and treatment floors with the ward above. And one of the things that we wanted to do was actually to bring the main entrance on the first floor. So in order to do that, we had to take a look at the site conditions. And one of the things we tried to achieve here is that the soil, the earth that we dig out for doing our technical basement is what we use to ramp up to actually get to the main entrance and to the staff entrance. So we make a very slight variation of the natural landscape in order to accommodate that. This is actually looking at the path going from the train station coming to the main entrance of the hospital. And you might be able to see how the landscape sort of rolls around the building. And you can also see that seen from here, it seems like a building in 3 stories. Yeah. And even more here. The way that we see it as architects is that we like to express that the 2 lower floors, they are sort of shared, they're communal, they're even urban, something that we share. And it should be very efficient and should be very easy to find your way around it. It's like being in a nice city, you could say. Whereas we would like to express that once you get treated, then you're in your own bed ward. And we would like to have the character be much more homely and small scale. So you actually can read that in the way that we've giving facades in the architecture. Even here you can see this is the main entrance, this is the diagnostic and treatment floors. But above that we've shaped the bedrooms as more as little houses that expresses themselves as little houses, and they do have their own balcony, but it's a very sort of different scale. Now, if you move further in from the main entrance, this is where you would be. And from here, this is where you find your way to the different departments or to the vertical course. But these rooms are very much given quality by all the different courtyards. And from here, you can also see right up to the big inner garden above level 1 and to the bed wards. Yeah? It takes a lot of study to actually be able to do that, because we wanted, seen from the bed wards, this central garden to be perceived as a big open garden. But we also need to actually give daylight to the functions below. So this has been one of the things that we've been investigating very closely, to make sure that all the spaces in the 2 lower floors, even though they're in the middle of our structure, will receive sufficient daylight. I think also in Sweden you have the same codes for daylight, that people that works must have daylight and a view to the exterior. So this is how we try to achieve that. We plan to give the different courtyards different qualities, so we can use it as wayfinding, as I told you. Can you walk into them? Huh? Can you walk into the gardens? In some of them you can. We've not really gone there. Another thing we have to solve is how to get the lawn mower in there. We haven't solved that yet, but this is what we're looking at. The courtyards right next to the outpatient clinics, they all have terraces. You can go on a terrace, but we don't have too many entrances going from the inside directly out to a courtyard. They're mainly for giving daylight and providing nature to the middle of the building. We use those round hedges to actually shelter, so you don't fall into the courtyards, but also to make sure that the rooms that are facing the inner garden, they get privacy. We think it's okay for people to walk from one kitchen area to the next, and we encourage that. But I don't think it would be a nice situation that if you're in this room, that people can get all the way up to your window. So we use this kind of round hedge system to achieve that. This is a situation where there's a close connection between the central part of a bed ward and the external garden. Right behind this picture you would have their eating, the kitchen situation, and we would want people to go out there. Yeah. This is an example of a treatment of one of the courtyards in the pedestal, where we have the outpatient clinics on the first floor, and on the ground floor it could be one of the heavy functions. I think this is our happy landscape architect who did that. I don't think there'll be so many plans, but the idea of trying to give or to provide this nature to those rooms, we think is very important. So maybe this explains a little bit what I was talking about, trying to get the bed wards down in scale, making them feel like a little house, small scale, relating to a garden. And these round hedges is what we use as railings for the courtyards. So if you look over them, you will see this picture. But if you walk right next to them, you look down in the courtyard. These hedges are used for also creating privacy for their individual bed wards. Yeah. The way that we plan to do this is we plan to do them prefabricated. So each bedroom will be produced off-site on a factory, and then it will be brought to the site and put in one piece on top of the concrete construction. This is both to save time, but also to save money, and also to make sure that the quality of the technical installations and everything is standardized and in very good shape. The way that we achieve this shape, this curved form, is by doing the bathrooms a little bit different. The bathroom is just a little bit wedge-shaped. So that's how we actually can make this form is like a spine, you could say. We managed to get the number of different bathrooms down to 5. So we have 5 different types now in order to make this shape. Yeah. The individual bedroom, we thought it was very important that it was friendly and had this contact to nature, and the material that you touch is something that's very nice to have. Like I said, we're working with a 19 square meter bedroom, including bathroom. The bathroom is 5.5 right now. And it's a fairly good shaped room where you can have your hospital bed, but also the possibility for an extra bed for families or friends staying over. I mentioned the balcony as very important. We are looking into whether we can use wood as floor material and ceiling material. But we might have some hygiene issues that we need to look into. But the feeling of having wood, we would appreciate very much. This is probably what makes it sort of homey and friendly. Yeah. Now, let us just pass that one and go to the future development. What I mentioned before was that we have this technical service village that needs to expand in all directions. That's planned for a production kitchen and for further additions west of the site. The region plans to do a psychiatric facility west of the hospital, and the service village is supposed to service both of them. Now, extension of the hospital is very important because we do need to have an extension strategy where we can build, say, a lot of new X-ray modalities, or we can build just a single one. And what this project allows for is that we can actually, in the footprint on the ground floor, we can extend diagnostic imaging by 50%, we can extend surgery by 20%, and ICU by 20%, and the FAM can also get 20% bigger. And that's under the footprint. When we look at ways of extending the outpatient clinics area, we're saying that maybe we could take some of the function that's placed there right now and place them in another building on the site, and then extend the outpatient clinics. Even the other functions, such as research offices and stuff like that, and labs, they're placed on, or they're based on the same grid as the outpatient clinics. So this is another move you can take. Bed wards is very political. Everybody says that maybe we need fewer bed wards because the treatment time of each patient gets much shorter. So you might expect that some of all these bed wards that we laid out would become redundant, and that therefore it's very important that they can be used as outpatient clinics or offices or whatever. But opposed to that, that's a political discussion in Denmark on, I don't know the word in English, but this hospital might serve a larger population than we anticipated in the start. Optageområdet hedder det på dansk. So we might have to add maybe a third more bed wards. It's not decided yet, but if you make that decision, we have ways of doing it. We can actually add 2 bedrooms to each 32 ward, and also we can add another floor, 4th floor it might be, of bed wards all around it. The way that we've arranged it with those prefab units, it's not that difficult. You can actually hoist them and place them. It's a very quiet construction site. And therefore it should be possible to actually add bed wards on top of the hospital. This is where this project is very, very different from all the other hospital projects in Denmark, that we plan to have our main additions or extensions either below the hospital or on top of the hospital. And that really occurred to us when we took a look at the other hospital. When we did the competition, we sat drawing this four-leaf clover and was very happy about it. Then we looked at the other hospitals with the exact same program, the super hospitals in Denmark. And we thought, maybe we're wrong and they're right, or maybe there's something we don't get, because all the other is mainly about having this main street on the first floor, and then you have these bar buildings connecting to it. And these bar buildings can be extended as you like it. And if you follow that logic, this is probably what you get. These sort of mega structures. Whereas our project has a finished form and will add over and under. This kind of sort of structure way of looking at it, like the other hospitals, I think works to a certain extent. We can see that in some of the hospital projects in Denmark, that, for instance, Hvidovre, that some of you might know, if you extend that too much, the distances from one end to the other becomes very difficult to tackle. There's sort of an end to the logic of just keeping on extending. At one point it makes no sense, and that's when you have to do a new hospital to keep up efficient distances and efficient flows. So we're not too concerned about that our hospitals is not able to actually extend endlessly. There's a limit to how much it can extend. And our argument is that if you want to extend substantially more than we already have planned for, then maybe you get into situations where the hospital is not functioning as well as it should because of the distances between the functions. That was it. I hope you got some of it. Yeah. Thank you.